What's going to help when we're looking at these examples is to basically go through our process of simplifying radicals. Break it up, take the radical, clean it up. And in the break it up step, if there's a negative underneath the radical, we're going to break off the square root -1 as its own thing. So if I want to take the square root of -16, I'm going to break it up as the square root of 16 and the square root of -1, where the square root of 16 I know is 4, and the square root of -1 I know is I. And please note that it's important that this is a lowercase I. Capital I does not mean the same thing. That's not your imaginary unit. So this is 4I. Now, similarly, when talking about the square root of -3i, I could break this up and say square root of 3 is the positive part. It's not a perfect square. But then I can break off the square root of -1. The square root of 3 copies down, but then the square root of -1 is just I. And so we're doing the same idea of break it up, take the radical, clean it up. We're just saying, hey, one of the radicals I know how to take is the square root of -1. So I can apply the same thing to this third piece in the example. The negative that's sitting out front just copies down. But if I'm going to break up -18, I can break it up as the perfect square of 9. What's left of 2, and then the -1. That would get me -18. Now if I take the radical, the negative copies down. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 2 copies down. And square root of -1 is I. So we're looking at -3 root 2 I.